The fluorescent lights in the emergency room buzzed like angry insects above my head. It was 2:07 a.m. when I finally reached for my phone with trembling fingers. The 4 taped to my arm tugged slightly when I moved. My head throbbed. My body felt like it had been wrung dry. I had collapsed halfway through my shift. 14 hours into a 10-hour shift, my knees simply gave out beneath me in the hallway of St. Mary's Medical Center. The doctors called it severe exhaustion and dehydration. But lying there in that hospital bed, staring at the dull ceiling tiles, I knew exhaustion wasn't the real reason my body had finally stopped. It was everything. I unlocked my phone to check messages. One notification immediately caught my eye. A Facebook post. From my younger sister. I tapped it. The picture filled my screen. It was a selfie of her sitting comfortably on my living room couch, holding a glass of wine and smiling like she had just won the lottery. The caption read, "Finally a peaceful night without the drama queen around. #blessed. 43 likes. And 3 laughing reactions. One of them was from my mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not crying. Not angry. Just hollow. Because while my sister was celebrating my absence, I was lying in a hospital bed completely alone. The hospital had called my parents when I collapsed. Neither of them came. But at that moment, I had no idea that this cruel little post was the smallest betrayal waiting for me. Because while I was working double shifts to support my family, my own father had been secretly stealing my identity. And he was 2 weeks away from legally taking everything I owned. My name is Rachel Turner. I'm 34 years old. I'm a nurse. And I'm the single mother of an 8-year-old girl named Emma. For most of my life, I believed family meant sacrifice. I believed you helped the people you loved, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That belief cost me almost everything. The collapse happened on a cold Tuesday night in October. The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. My shift had technically ended 4 hours earlier, but another nurse had called in sick, so I stayed. I always stayed. Someone had to. By hour 11, my hands were shaking slightly. I hid it by gripping the medication cart. By hour 13, the lights above me had started to blur into halos. I blamed the lighting. But by hour 14, when I was carrying patient charts down the east corridor, the floor suddenly tilted. My vision went black at the edges. My knees buckled. Papers scattered across the floor. Someone shouted my name. And then everything disappeared. When I woke up, I was staring at the ER ceiling. A nurse I barely knew stood beside my bed. "Rachel, you scared us," she said gently. "You collapsed." I nodded weakly. "Your vitals are stable, but you're severely dehydrated. We're keeping you overnight." I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength. After she left, I just lay there listening to the quiet hum of machines. That's when I checked my phone and saw my sister's post. I screenshot it before setting the phone face down on the blanket. I didn't know why. Maybe instinct. Maybe some part of me already knew I would need proof one day. The next morning, they discharged me. I drove home slowly, gripping the steering wheel as October rain tapped against the windshield. 30 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of the small white house my grandmother had left me 12 years earlier. It wasn't fancy. Just a simple 3-bedroom home with a porch that needed repainting and a crooked mailbox. But it was mine. Or at least, it was supposed to be. When I walked inside, the TV was already on. My father, Richard Turner, sat in his recliner drinking coffee. He glanced at me briefly. "You look fine," he said. Then he turned back to the television. My mother stood at the stove stirring oatmeal. She didn't even look up. "There's coffee if you want it." My sister Melissa was sprawled across the couch scrolling through her phone. No one asked how I was. No one asked if I was okay. I stood in the hallway for a moment waiting. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Nothing. So I went upstairs. Emma was already awake. She sat on her bed with her backpack beside her. The moment she saw me, she jumped up and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Mama, Grandpa said you just got tired at work." I hugged her tightly. "I'm okay, sweetheart." And for the first time that morning, I felt something warm inside my chest. Because no matter how bad everything else was, she was my reason to keep going. 1 week later, everything changed. It started with something small. A routine conversation with the hospital billing department. The woman on the phone suggested I check my credit report before setting up my payment plan. "Just to make sure there aren't any issues with your insurance," she said. I almost laughed. I'd never checked my credit report before. Why would I? I didn't have loans. I owned my house outright. I had no credit card debt. There was nothing to check. But that night, sitting in my car outside the hospital parking lot, I opened my laptop and pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. The first thing I noticed was the score. 524. My stomach dropped. That was impossible. Then I saw the accounts. 3 credit cards. Balances totaling $46,700. All opened in the past 3 years. My hands started shaking. I opened the first application. Then the second. Then the third. Each one had the same signature. I recognized it instantly. The capital T in Turner had a small hook at the top. A habit my father had his entire life. I stared at the screen in silence. Because my father hadn't even tried to hide it. He'd simply signed his own name while using my social security number. Like he believed I would never look. I sat in that car for nearly 15 minutes. The parking lot was dark. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. $46,700. That was nearly 2 years of my take-home salary. Money I never borrowed. Money I never spent. Money that was now destroying my credit. And then a terrifying thought hit me. If he had used my identity, what else had he done? I immediately called my college friend Laura Bennett, who was now a lawyer. The moment she answered, I said, "Laura, I think my father stole my identity." There was silence for a moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "Rachel, don't confront him." My heart started pounding. Why? Because if he's desperate enough to steal from you, he's desperate enough to do something worse. There was another pause. Then she asked a question that made my blood run cold. "Rachel, have you checked your daughter's credit?" That night, after Emma fell asleep, I opened my laptop again. Checking a child's credit file isn't simple. But eventually, one bureau returned a result. I stared at the screen. Another credit card. Opened 6 months earlier. In the name of Emma Turner. Balance, $1,100. My daughter was 8 years old. She still wrote her letters backwards sometimes. And someone had already used her identity. I slowly closed the laptop. Then I looked down the hallway toward Emma's bedroom door. And something inside me hardened. They could call me dramatic. They could laugh at me online. They could steal from me. But the moment they touched my child, they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And the next morning, I discovered something even worse. Something that proved my father hadn't just stolen my identity. He had been planning to take my entire life. Legally. The next morning Rachel went to see her lawyer friend Laura Bennett. She carried everything with her: credit reports, screenshots, and documents. Laura listened quietly while reading the papers. Her expression slowly changed from concern to shock. "This is identity theft," she said firmly. "And it's serious." Then Laura opened the county court database on her computer and searched Rachel's name. What appeared on the screen made Rachel's heart stop. Her father, Richard Turner, had filed a legal petition for guardianship over her. The document claimed Rachel was mentally unstable due to repeated medical episodes and couldn't manage her own finances. If the court approved it, Richard would gain complete control over Rachel's money, property, and house. He could sell everything. Rachel felt cold all over. Her own father was trying to legally steal the house her grandmother had left her. And the witness supporting his claim? Her sister Melissa. Laura immediately started building a legal defense. They filed identity theft reports, police complaints, medical records proving Rachel was mentally fit, financial documents showing Rachel owned the house outright. Laura also gave Rachel another piece of advice. Do not tell them what you know yet. Rachel nodded. But she was already planning something bigger. A few days later, Richard called Rachel and told her the family would have a meeting at their church. He claimed it was to help Rachel get support. But Rachel knew the truth. He wanted the community to believe she was unstable. Sunday morning, the church hall was full. Neighbors, church members, friends of the family. Nearly 25 people sat in folding chairs. Richard stood up and spoke first. He told everyone Rachel had been sick, overwhelmed, and making dangerous decisions. He said he was trying to protect her by seeking guardianship. People in the room began nodding sympathetically. Some even looked at Rachel with pity. Her mother started crying softly. Melissa shook her head dramatically like Rachel was out of control. Rachel sat quietly until the pastor finally asked, "Rachel, would you like to say something?" Rachel slowly stood up. Then she placed a thick folder on the table. Inside were the house deed proving she owned the property, credit reports showing $46,000 in fraud, signed credit applications with her father's handwriting, the police identity theft report, the court petition her father had secretly filed. The room fell silent as she explained everything. People began whispering. Faces turned from sympathy to shock. Richard tried to interrupt her. But the evidence was undeniable. The pastor looked at him with disappointment. "Richard, is this true?" Richard couldn't answer. The room had already turned against him. Rachel ended with one final announcement. "My house is now listed for sale," she said calmly. "And everyone living there has 30 days to leave." The fallout happened quickly. The court dismissed Richard's guardianship petition immediately after seeing the identity theft evidence. Police opened a criminal investigation. The fraudulent credit cards were frozen. Emma's stolen credit account was removed. Richard eventually accepted a plea deal for identity theft. He avoided prison but received probation and a criminal record. His reputation in the small town collapsed. Melissa moved away. Rachel's mother stayed with Richard but rarely spoke to Rachel again. Rachel sold the house for $178,000. With the money she paid off all medical bills, moved with Emma to a new city, started a college fund for her daughter, transferred to a new hospital with better hours. Life became quieter, peaceful. One evening Emma showed Rachel a drawing. It was a picture of a small house with flowers. Two people stood in front of it holding hands. "That's us, Mama," Emma said. Rachel smiled. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt before. Freedom. Because she had finally stopped carrying the weight of people who never deserved it. And she knew one thing for certain now. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people you protect, and who protect you back.